Welcome to the broadcast. Alongside me on sign language interpretation tonight is David Agondoa. Now, non-state actors have raised concerns over the disorganization of the Africa Climate Summit, putting the organizers of the event on the spot for locking out key actors in the climate change agenda, including indigenous communities and more than 900 delegates who have missed out on the accreditation. Meanwhile, the Youth Climate Summit has come to a close today, with President William Ruto challenging the youth to fight for their space in the climate change conversation. The president drove himself to the summit in an electric vehicle and an all-electric motorcade. NTV's Melita Oletenges opens our broadcast tonight.
The Africa Climate Summit, hosted in Nairobi from the 4th to 6th of September, will be the nerve center of the conversation on climate change in Africa this week. But the event, organized by the African Union and the government of Kenya, is already under harsh criticism by non-state actors who have criticized the events leading up to the conference, especially the accreditation process for indigenous communities and civil society groups.
The pre-summit that indigenous people have organized all of Africa from more than 20 countries. And one point I want to raise is the participation of indigenous people, especially starting tomorrow. They have traveled all the way, more than many miles away, and many countries around the region, and they need their badges. They want to participate. They cannot come here for a pre-summit, and they fail to be in the summit.
If it is not for Africans, this summit is for who else? You know, the challenge, and this is where we are outraged, is we always find ourselves having to fight to have a seat elsewhere. When it's happening in Africa, we still have to fight to have a seat.
Meanwhile, on the front lines of showing commitment in dealing with the climate crisis, President William Ruto drove himself from State House to the KICC and back in an electric vehicle, departing from the norm. And in similar fashion, his motorcade, all electric cars and motorcycles to reduce carbon emissions. The president closed the Youth Climate Summit in Nairobi, where he emphasized on the need for Africa's carbon assets to be accurately valued.
Single challenge that faces humanity and that threatens our future. And the young people being the greatest stakeholders of that future, you are rightly in place to make suggestions about this existential threat that affects not just our present, but also threatens our future.
President of the African Development Bank Group, Akinwumi Adesina, reiterated that African governments must include the youth in the climate change conversation, while asking African nations to be true to the cause and invest in agriculture.
About economic development, economic policies, about programs and financing, we have to put the youth primarily at the center of everything that we do. Second, it's not just about talking about the youth, Mr. President. It's about delivering for them.
The inaugural Africa Climate Summit will focus on investment in solutions for sustainability, ultimately leading to the development of the Nairobi Declaration. Melita Oletenges, NTV.